most of us don't have a franchise background. You didn't have a franchise background like 99% of us when we franchise. How did you come to be then becoming the president of the company and stepping up, and you were leaving a career to take a pretty big risk?
A huge risk. I was mortified, but it's been great. I think it's one of those things. It's a little bit without risk, without taking risk, rewards don't necessarily always come.
Absolutely.
So, that's just part of it right there. But faith in the sport of foaling, faith in the excitement that we've seen people get when they come across foaling. Their mind is blown. They love bowling. They love football. How can you merge this together and not be successful?
Yeah, right.
Yep.
Absolutely. One of the questions I usually ask people is what makes your business unique compared to others in the industry? But that question does not apply to you, of course. Is it safe to assume, though, you guys have the trademarks and any patents on foaling?
Yes, absolutely. That was the first thing we did when deciding to franchise the program.
Well, that's awesome that you guys are, built a moat, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
In franchising, it doesn't take long before people start sniffing around and they can figure out, hey, if somebody's making money doing this, we're gonna jump aboard and compete with them.
Yep. Always something we're very aware of and tracking.
Yeah, well, you guys have definitely have a unique spot here. What was life like first becoming a franchisor in a concept that had never been done before? And how did you find your first half dozen franchisees? I mean, that's where you are right now. We have 6 franchise locations and 2 company owned. So how did that all come out to be?
A lot of, learning. First and foremost, I had to educate myself. Our team had to educate ourselves. Surrounding yourself with people smarter than you is always a great thing too. Bringing in those experts that have been through it and, utilizing their lessons learned to avoid pitfalls in your future to the best of your ability. Because as you know, in franchising, you don't know what you don't know until you don't know it, but it'll pop up eventually, right?
Sure will. And where did you find your first franchisees, the first half dozen?
First franchisee is in Cincinnati, and that was actually through a friend of our founders. He had put together a group. They were actually foaling fans. We had shared it with them years prior, and they ended up doing foaling tournaments in their neighborhood, just like as kind of a neighborhood party thing.
Mm-hmm.
And again, the folks that were playing were like, "This is amazing. We're having such a great time. We should do something with it." So eventually they put together an investment group, and that was our first franchise. And from there, it's really been organic, word of mouth. There wasn't a huge electronic campaign. It was really people finding foaling, seeing foaling, and then reaching out and saying, "I would like to be a part of this," and developing a program with them, or initially vetting them out. There are always a lot of tire kickers in the franchise world.
Of course.
But once you validate, you just start from there. And like I said, it's exciting.
Well, you've gotten attention from people all over. So you've got 8 total locations across 7 states. So you're definitely starting to get that penetration around the country. Even outside the Midwest now, from what you gathered, right? We have Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, Texas, Georgia, Nebraska, and Missouri. So,
correct.
Yeah, we have growth all over. What's the investment range of the franchise, and how big is the footprint of a typical franchise warehouse? I assume, right?
Yeah, so we have warehouses ranging from 25,000 square feet all the way to our Dallas location, which is 70,000 plus square feet. Everything's always bigger in Texas, as we know. So,
of course, it's got to be that. Of course, it had to be Texas with the largest location.
Of course. In general, around 30,000 square feet is ideal, and our range for the build out and getting everything ready to go to open the doors were anywhere between 1.7 million and 2.8 million.
Okay. Help walk me through what a typical warehouse looks like for the audience, besides obviously the folding lanes. What is how big is like the way the restaurants are set up, bars? What are some of the amenities that you guys have?
So part of our brand perspective is industrial strength fun. We want to give a nod to that industrial background of Detroit, where, we always say born in Indy, raised in Detroit for folk. Detroit was the mecca of manufacturing back in the day. So we wanted to give a nod to our heritage. So as you walk in, the first thing that the customers see is just the scale. They're like, oh my gosh, this place is huge. We keep it very, concrete floors, nothing real special, shiny, blingy. We built rinks to house the folding lanes to keep balls in perspective, if you will, and not whizzing into the bar or things like that. A lot of metal and a lot of our tabletops, things like that, are mirrored after old bowling lanes. So our first bar we actually built out of rock maple bowling lanes, and a few hundred saw blades and sanding discs later, we learned we need to figure out how to make that a little more efficient. But we definitely give that nod to industrial strength fun and just a fun atmosphere.
Okay. Brad, who's your ideal franchise owner?
Ideal franchise owner is, first and foremost, they love the sport. They are funded appropriately to give the franchise the best chance they can. As we know in the franchise world, some folks that may come in underfunded, it's always a struggle, and then they kind of drop down. So somebody who's passionate about the sport, funded, and has a desire to grow with the business. We're still young. We're still, even after quite a few years, I say we're still in our infancy, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And as the word spreads, we're going to evolve more into those institutional folks that want to do multiple locations and tie in their, 3 or 4 locations within the AFA, the American Folding Association, which is also another spinoff company.
We have a sanctioning body, do we?
We absolutely do. The governing body of folding is the American Folding Association.
That's great. What about let's paint the picture of really what it takes to be successful as a franchise owner, because we all know it. Loving the sport is one thing, but that's not gonna get the turnstiles spinning. And that, to me, is the blessing and curse of most businesses where there's a love of the product or service. I know it was in my case where people love sports, so they wanted to own the business. But as we all know, you're not going to be playing the sport, or you're not going to be coaching the sport. You're going to be doing marketing, management, operations, finance, technology, the nuts and bolts of actually being a successful business owner. If you could share with the audience here, like, what are some of those traits they need to be successful? What does their day-to-day look like?
Well, your day-to-day is, you spend a lot of time at the warehouse, but traits that I'm looking for: organized, financial, having financial wherewithal, kind of a type A personality. When you transition from, for example, like myself, from more of the corporate world into a franchise or your own business, you really have to be looking at all the things, not only right in front of you, but a few steps out,
Mm-hmm. Sure.
and anticipating things. So that person is just kind of well-rounded. Now, if they show that they're a smart person, that they can adapt to situations, they are properly funded. Our training program, our operations program is very robust. We can get you the knowledge that you need to become a successful franchise owner. We spend a lot of time making sure that folks and their staff are trained appropriately and reflect the love and passion of our sport that we have to the new markets that we're going into.
Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fiume, or Emerging Franchise Group LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.